Commander Thuron Drake stood at the observation deck of Outpost Omega, watching the distant stars fade into the encroaching darkness. The emergency klaxons had been blaring for hours, their urgent wails a constant reminder of humanity's impending doom. The Siltharian Empire's invasion fleet would arrive within 48 hours, and Earth's last colony had nothing left to throw at them. "Commander," a voice called from behind him, "the Council is ready." Drake turned to face Lieutenant Raven Walsh, his most trusted officer. The years had weathered them both, but her eyes still held that same fierce determination he'd first noticed during the Battle of Proxima. "Tell them I'm not interested in another evacuation plan," Drake said, his voice carrying the weight of too many retreats. "It's different this time," Raven replied, handing him a data tablet. "They're authorizing Protocol Zero." Drake's hand froze mid-reach. Protocol Zero wasn't supposed to exist. It was a myth, a desperate plan conceived during the darkest days of the war. "They're that desperate." "We all ours." The council chamber was dimly lit when Drake arrived, the holographic displays casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of Earth's last military leadership. Admiral Thaddeus Winter, his mentor and friend, stood at the center. "The Phantom Horizon is real," Winter began without preamble, "and you're the only one left alive who can pilot her." Drake's mind raced back 15 years to classified briefings about an experimental warship designed to match an entire fleet. The project had been scrapped after the test pilots kept dying, their minds unable to handle the neural interface. "I thought she was destroyed during the fall of Neptune," Drake said. "We needed everyone to think that," Winter replied. "Including the Siltharians, she's been in deep storage, waiting for the right moment and the right pilot." The holographic display shifted, showing a massive vessel unlike anything Drake had ever seen. Its hull seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to focus on any single feature. "But there's a catch," Winter continued. "We have an unexpected volunteer to serve as your strategic officer." The chamber doors opened, and Drake's hand instinctively moved to his sidearm. Walking toward them was a Siltharian, tall, elegant, with iridescent scales that shifted colors in the dim light. But unlike any he'd seen before, her eyes held something almost human: regret. "I am Nyara Valthes," she said, her voice carrying both authority and humility. "Former High Strategist of the Empire's 7th Fleet." "Former," Drake's finger rested on his weapon's trigger. "The Empire is no longer what it claims to be," Nyara replied. "What you face is not an invasion force, it's a harvest fleet. They don't want your worlds, they want your minds." Admiral Winter stepped between them. "Nyara defected 6 months ago, bringing vital intelligence. She's been vetted thoroughly, and more importantly, she's the only one who knows how to counter their new weapon systems." Drake looked at the alien who represented everything he'd fought against for 2 decades. "Why should I trust you?" Nyara's scales shifted to a deep blue, a color Drake had never seen on a Siltharian before. "Because like you, Commander, I've lost everything I ever believed in, and like you, I intend to make them pay for that loss." The next 12 hours were a blur of preparation. The Phantom Horizon was brought out of her frozen slumber, her systems awakening one by one. Drake stood in the neural interface chamber, technicians attaching the quantum link nodes to his temples. "The ship's AI will attempt to sync with your consciousness," the chief technician explained. "Previous pilots, their minds couldn't handle the merger, but your neural patterns are different." "You mean I'm already broken enough that it might work?" Drake said with a grim smile. The neural link activated, and Drake's world exploded into light and sensation. He was the ship, every sensor, every weapon, every particle of her being became an extension of his consciousness. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying. Through the haze of integration, he heard Nyara's voice. "Commander, focus on my presence. Let me be your anchor." Her consciousness touched the edge of his awareness, alien yet somehow familiar. Where his mind threatened to scatter across the ship's vast systems, her thoughts provided structure, order, and focus. "Neural sync stabilizing," the technician announced, surprise evident in his voice. "It's actually working." The Phantom Horizon came fully alive under their joint guidance. Her engines hummed with power that defied conventional physics, her weapons stirred like sleeping dragons about to wake. "Time to impact?" Drake asked, his voice now carrying subtle harmonics from his connection to the ship. "Enemy fleet will exit hyperspace in 18 hours, Raven reported from her tactical station. 8 dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, and enough fighters to blot out the stars." "Good odds," Nyara said, her scales shifting to a predatory red. "They won't expect us to attack them in hyperspace." Drake turned to face her, seeing her both with his eyes and through the ship's sensors. "Can we do that?" "This ship can," she replied. "The question is, can you trust me enough to show you how?" Drake studied her for a long moment. Everything in his experience screamed at him not to trust a Siltharian. But the ship's sensors showed him something his eyes couldn't: the pattern of her thoughts, the rhythm of her intentions. There was no deception there. "We have 18 hours to learn to trust each other," he said finally. "The lives of everyone in this colony depend on it." Nyara's scales rippled with approval. "Then let me show you what the Phantom Horizon can really do." As they prepared for departure, Drake received one final message from Admiral Winter. "Remember, son, sometimes the greatest victories come not from strength alone, but from the courage to trust when all logic says otherwise." The Phantom Horizon rose from her secret berth, her hull already beginning to bend light around her. In the neural interface, Drake felt the ship's eagerness to prove herself, matched by his own determination to protect humanity's last hope. Beside him, Nyara began inputting calculations for their hyperspace intercept, her movements precise and confident. "Ready for your first lesson in impossible warfare, Commander." Drake allowed himself a small smile. "Teach me how to make them regret ever coming here." The ship accelerated toward the stars, carrying with it humanity's last hope and an alliance that would rewrite the future of 2 species. The hunt was about to begin. The Helios maze stretched before them like a twisted web of fractured starlight. Through the Phantom Horizon's enhanced sensors, Commander Drake could see the quantum distortions that made this region of space notorious. Ribbons of warped reality where the laws of physics went to die. "Admiral Kyne's Hunter Squadron is closing in," Lieutenant Raven reported from her station. 3 Ravager-class destroyers, each carrying enough firepower to level a continent. Drake felt Nyara's consciousness brush against his through the neural interface. "They sent Solomon Kyne himself." Her scales shifted to a deep purple, a color he was learning to associate with strategic calculation. "He was my finest student in tactical warfare." "And now he's hunting his teacher," Drake replied, feeling the Phantom Horizon's systems respond to his thoughts. The ship's quantum-shifted armor adapted continuously, making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. But Kyne's ships were far from conventional. A bolt of energy seared past their starboard bow, impossibly accurate despite their stealth systems. Nyara's scales flickered. "He's using probability vectors to predict our position, just as I taught him." "Then let's teach him something new," Drake said, diving the ship into the maze's outer boundary. The Phantom Horizon's hull screamed as reality itself tried to tear them apart, but the neural interface allowed Drake to feel and adapt to each spatial distortion before it hit. Nyara's mind merged deeper with his and the ship's systems, her alien perspective giving him insights into patterns he would have missed. "There," she guided his attention to a particular twist in space-time. "That convergence point will multiply any energy signature passing through it." Drake understood immediately. He fired a minimal burst from their aft cannons directly into the anomaly. The energy cascaded through the quantum distortion, emerging as a devastating wave that caught one of Kyne's destroyers off guard. The enemy vessel's shields buckled under the amplified assault. "Clever," Raven commented, "but they're still blocking our path to the hyperspace junction. We need that junction to intercept the main fleet." Through the neural link, Drake felt Nyara's excitement spike. "Commander, do you trust me enough to try something extremely inadvisable?" "Define inadvisable," Drake replied, even as he maneuvered them through another barrage of enemy fire. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core can synchronize with the maze's distortions. We could essentially become one with the chaos, ride the probability waves themselves. That sounds less like tactics and more like suicide, Raven interjected. Previous attempts to navigate the maze this way had a 100% fatality rate, Nyara admitted. But those ships didn't have our neural integration, with our combined consciousness guiding the ship. A direct hit rocked their vessel, interrupting her explanation. Drake felt the impact through the neural interface, felt the ship's pain as his own. We're running out of options. How do we do this? Nyara's consciousness enveloped his, showing rather than telling. Drake saw the maze through her eyes, not as an obstacle, but as a dance partner waiting for the right lead. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core began to pulse in rhythm with the spatial distortions. Lieutenant Walsh, Drake called out, secure all stations for extreme spatial distortion. This is going to get interesting. Aye, Commander, though I'd prefer interesting didn't mean fatal. Drake let his mind fully merge with Nyara's alien perspective. Together, they began to move the ship in ways that should have been impossible. The Phantom Horizon didn't so much fly through the maze as flow with it, becoming momentarily quantum uncertain between positions. Behind them, Kine's remaining ships attempted to follow. The lead vessel, recognizing the danger too late, was caught in a probability shear and twisted into shapes that hurt to look at. The second destroyer retreated, but Admiral Kine's flagship pressed on. He's adaptable, Nyara observed with what felt like pride through their link. He's analyzing our pattern. Then let's not have a pattern, Drake responded. He stopped trying to navigate conventionally and surrendered to the chaos dance Nyara had shown him. The Phantom Horizon became like quantum poetry, here and not here, dancing between possibilities. Through their merged consciousness, they felt Kine's growing frustration. His ships launched salvos that hit empty space, always a probability too late. But he was learning, adjusting, closing the gap. We've got another problem, Raven announced. The maze is affecting our quantum core stability. We've got maybe 5 minutes before we lose coherence. Drake felt Nyara's mind race through calculations. The junction is still 2 minutes out at our best speed. We need a diversion. No, Drake corrected, an idea forming in their shared consciousness. We need a reminder. He reached deep into the ship systems, finding a communication frequency he knew Kine would recognize. Through it, he transmitted a single image, the aftermath of the liberation of Proxima, where Drake's outnumbered fleet had succeeded because the enemy commander refused to believe humans could be so audacious. The effect was immediate. Kine's pursuit faltered for just a moment, but a moment was all they needed. Drake and Nyara guided their ship through a complex series of quantum states, using the maze's own chaos as a weapon. 30 seconds to core collapse, Raven warned. Junction point ahead, Nyara announced, but Kine's still in range to follow us through. Drake smiled, not if we collapse the junction behind us. Through their link, he showed her his plan. That's Nyara's scales shifted to a color he'd never seen before. That's beautiful in its insanity. Together, they pushed the Phantom Horizon to its limit. As they approached the junction, they deliberately destabilized their quantum core, timing its cascade to match their jump to hyperspace. The resulting quantum backwash would seal the junction for hours. Now, Drake commanded. Reality twisted, folded, and snapped. For a moment that felt like eternity, they existed in multiple states simultaneously. Then they were through, the junction collapsing behind them in a spectacular display of quantum mathematics gone wrong. As normal space reformed around them, Drake felt Nyara's consciousness slowly disengage from the deep merge, though maintaining their baseline link. Her scales had settled into a warm gold color he was beginning to associate with satisfaction. "Status report," he called out, his own mind still buzzing from the intensity of their shared experience. "Core stabilizing," Raven reported. "Hull integrity at acceptable levels and, sir, we've cut 12 hours off our intercept course with the main fleet." 12 hours, Drake mused. That's 12 hours they won't expect us to have. He turned to Nyara, seeing her both with his eyes and through the ship's sensors, ready to show them what else this ship can do. Nyara's scales rippled with anticipation. After what we just accomplished, Commander, we're just getting started. The Phantom Horizon cruised through hyperspace, its quantum core humming with renewed purpose. They had survived the maze, outmaneuvered Kine, and proven that their unlikely partnership could achieve the impossible. But as Drake studied the tactical projections for their upcoming encounter with the main fleet, he couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges and tests of trust still lay ahead. The Crimson Nebula lived up to its name, its vast clouds of ionized gas casting everything in shades of blood and fire. The Phantom Horizon drifted silently through the stellar maze, its quantum-shifted hull drinking in the radiation like a ghost feeding on memories. Commander Drake stood in the ship's observation bay, his neural link providing him with data that his eyes alone could never process. Through it, he could feel Nyara approaching before she entered the room, her presence in his mind now as familiar as his own thoughts. "The fleet will arrive in 6 hours," she said, her scales shifting through patterns he'd never seen in other Soltharians. "Lieutenant Walsh has finished analyzing the data we gathered during our escape through the Helios maze." And Drake turned to face her, nodding the tension in her posture. "The harvest ships they're bringing, they're not what we thought." Nyara's scales darkened to a deep indigo. "They're not just coming for human minds, they're coming for their souls." Drake felt her consciousness brush against his through their link, carrying with it fragments of memories that weren't his own. He saw vast chambers filled with crystalline matrices, each containing the essence of a captured consciousness. But these weren't just stored minds. They were tortured, fractured things, their very essence being used to power something monstrous. "Show me," he said quietly. Nyara's mind merged deeper with his, and the full horror of what she knew poured through their connection. The Siltharian Empire had discovered a way to convert consciousness itself into energy, using the quantum properties of thought to power their most devastating weapons. Each harvest ship was a mobile factory, designed to process entire populations into fuel for their war machine. "That's why you really defected," Drake realized, feeling the truth of it through their link. "But there's more, isn't there?" Nyara's scales shifted to a color he'd never seen before, a deep, resonant purple that seemed to absorb light itself. "I didn't just discover this program, Commander. I helped create it." The revelation hit Drake like a physical blow. He instinctively pulled back from their mental connection, his hand moving toward his sidearm. Through the ship's sensors, he felt Lieutenant Walsh and her security team tensing at their stations, having monitored the conversation. "I was the head of quantum consciousness research," Nyara continued, making no move to defend herself. "I thought we were developing a way to preserve our people's minds beyond death, but they took my research and twisted it into something obscene." "Why didn't you tell us this before?" Drake's finger rested on his weapon's trigger, but he didn't draw it. "Would you have trusted me?" Her scales rippled with something that might have been pain. "Would you have believed that the architect of their greatest weapon wanted to destroy it?" Through their lingering mental connection, Drake felt the truth of her words and the depth of her regret. He saw flashes of her discoveries, her initial excitement at the possibilities, and then the horrifying moment when she realized what her work had become. "Commander," Raven's voice came through the ship's comm. "Long-range sensors are picking up something odd about the enemy fleet's approach vector." Drake maintained eye contact with Nyara. "Explain." "They're not just bringing harvest ships," Nyara said. "They're bringing the core, the central processing matrix that controls the entire consciousness extraction network. My creation. Which means we have a chance to do more than just stop this fleet." Her scales shifted to that strange gold color he'd come to associate with hope. "We can destroy the entire program, but you need me to trust you completely," Drake finished. "To give you access to the ship's quantum core so you can interface with your creation." The moment hung between them like a blade. Through their neural link, Drake could feel the Phantom Horizon itself seeming to hold its breath, its advanced AI processing the implications of their exchange. Commander, Raven's voice came again, more urgent now. If she's telling the truth, this could be our only chance to end this war if she's lying. If I'm lying, I could use the ship systems to destroy everything you're fighting to protect, Nyara completed the thought. I know what I'm asking, Commander. I know the price of trust. Drake studied her, both with his eyes and through the ship's enhanced perception. He saw the pattern of her thoughts, the rhythm of her intentions, laid bare through their neural connection. In all his years of fighting the Siltharians, he'd never seen one show the emotions he now saw in Nyara. The real question, he said finally, isn't whether I can trust you, it's whether I can afford not to. He made his decision. Through their neural link, he opened up full access to the ship's quantum core, feeling Nyara's consciousness expand into the systems they would need to interface with the enemy's soul-harvesting matrix. Lieutenant Walsh, he called out, begin preparations for total quantum engagement. We're going to hit them with everything this ship has. Aye, Commander, Raven responded, though he could hear the concern in her voice. And sir, whatever happens, it's been an honor. Nyara's scales shifted through colors he'd never seen before as she began interfacing with the ship systems at a deeper level than they'd yet attempted. Through their connection, Drake felt the complexity of what she was attempting, a precise quantum dance that would turn the enemy's own consciousness-based weapons against them. There's something else you should know, Nyara said as she worked. The reason I can interface so perfectly with this ship, the reason our neural link works so well. Her scales settled into that deep, light-absorbing purple again. The quantum consciousness technology that powers their weapons, it was reverse-engineered from this ship, from the Phantom Horizon herself. Drake felt the truth of it resonate through their connection, felt the ship's AI confirm it with a pulse of recognition. The Phantom Horizon had been built using principles humanity barely understood, principles that Nyara had spent her life decoding and expanding upon. Then let's use that connection, Drake said, fully embracing their neural link. Let's show them what happens when the created turns against its creators. As the enemy fleet approached through the crimson clouds of the nebula, the Phantom Horizon's quantum core began to pulse with new purpose. In the space between moments, between thoughts, Drake and Nyara prepared to wage a war not just of ships and weapons, but of consciousness itself. The price of tomorrow would be paid in trust, in sacrifice, and in the currency of souls. But as Drake felt Nyara's mind merge completely with his and the ship's, he knew they had no choice but to pay it in full. The Crimson Nebula churned with electromagnetic storms as the Phantom Horizon maneuvered through its deadly currents. Through the neural interface, Drake felt each disturbance like music in his blood, a symphony of stellar forces that Nyara was teaching him to conduct. Enemy fleet holding position at the nebula's edge, Raven reported from Tactical. 8 dreadnoughts, 23 support vessels, and, her voice caught. Confirmed visual on the core ship, it's massive. The core ship dwarfed even the dreadnoughts, its crystalline surface reflecting the nebula's crimson light like a planet made of blood diamonds. Through their link, Drake felt Nyara's mix of pride and revulsion at her creation. The core is more than just a ship, Nyara explained, her scales rippling with tension. It's a quantum computer built from millions of harvested consciousnesses. Every mind they've stolen adds to its processing power. Drake watched through the ship's enhanced sensors as the enemy fleet began deploying in a standard Siltharian battle formation. They still think they're hunting us, he observed. They don't realize we're setting the stage. No, Nyara agreed, her mind merging deeper with his and the ship's systems. They never understood that consciousness isn't just energy to be harvested. It's a force that can shape reality itself. The plan they developed was audacious to the point of insanity. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core, combined with Nyara's intimate knowledge of consciousness technology, would turn the nebula itself into a weapon. But the price would be steep. All stations prepare for full quantum engagement, Drake commanded. Lieutenant Walsh, begin the resonance sequence. The Phantom Horizon's engines pulsed in a precise pattern, sending quantum ripples through the nebula's charged gases. Through their neural link, Drake felt Nyara guiding the ship's energy emissions, tuning them like instruments in an orchestra. First wave of enemy fighters incoming, Raven announced. They're trying to flush us out. Drake didn't need the warning. He could feel the approaching ships through the nebula's electromagnetic field. With a thought, he shifted the phantom horizon through quantum states, becoming momentarily uncertain in space-time. Enemy fire passed through empty probability clouds where their ship had been microseconds before. Now, Nyara prompted, her scales glowing with intensity. The nebula's quantum field is aligned. Drake opened his mind fully to the neural interface, letting Nyara's consciousness guide his actions. Together, they began to play the nebula like a vast instrument of war. Each pulse of their quantum core set up resonances in the charged gases, creating patterns of constructive and destructive interference. The first enemy fighter squadron flew into one of these patterns and simply ceased to exist, their quantum waveforms canceled out by the nebula's carefully tuned fields. Others found their navigation systems scrambled by probability storms, crashing into each other in spectacular displays of chaos theory made manifest. Multiple dreadnoughts powering up their main guns, Raven reported. They're going to try to burn away the nebula itself. Perfect, Nyara's scales shifted to that predatory red. Their energy weapons will only add to our symphony. As the dreadnoughts fired, Drake and Nyara used their neural link to redirect the massive energy discharges, feeding them into the quantum resonance patterns they'd established. The nebula's gases began to swirl in impossible ways, forming structures that shouldn't exist in normal space-time. Through their connection, Drake felt the moment approaching, the point where all their careful orchestration would reach its crescendo. But he also felt something else, the strain their deep neural merger was putting on both their minds. Nyara, he warned, feeling her consciousness starting to fragment under the pressure. I know, she responded, her scales flickering between colors. But we have to maintain the link until the pattern is complete. The core ship is starting to realize what we're doing. She was right. The massive crystalline vessel was powering up its harvest engines, preparing to drain the consciousness from anything within range. But that too was part of their plan. Lieutenant Walsh, Drake called out, his voice strained from the neural feedback. Execute final movement. Raven's hands flew across her console, initiating the sequence they'd prepared. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core began to pulse in a new rhythm, one that matched exactly with the core ship's harvest frequency. They're taking our bait, Nyara observed, her mind now so deeply merged with Drake's that he couldn't tell where his thoughts ended and hers began. The core is trying to drain our consciousness through the neural link. But instead of fighting the harvest beam, they embraced it. Through their merged consciousness, they sent a cascade of quantum information back through the connection, a virus written in the language of thought itself. The effect was devastating. The core ship's crystalline surface began to crack as millions of stored consciousnesses awakened, fighting their imprisonment. The quantum resonance patterns in the nebula amplified their rebellion, turning the core's own harvest network against it. Multiple dreadnoughts losing power, Raven reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. The core ship's quantum field is collapsing. Drake felt triumph surge through their neural link, but also something else, a dangerous instability in their merged consciousness. Nyara's mind was beginning to dissolve under the strain of maintaining their connection to both the ship and the nebula's quantum fields. We have to disconnect, he insisted, feeling her slipping away. Not yet. Nyara's physical form was trembling, her scales cycling through colors faster than the eye could follow. One last note in our symphony. Through their fatting link, she showed him her final plan, a way to use the collapsing core ship's own quantum field to create a cascade effect that would destroy the entire enemy fleet. But the cost. Nyara, it'll kill you, Drake protested, trying to pull back from their mental connection. Her consciousness wrapped around his one last time, carrying feelings that transcended words. Some prices are worth paying, Commander. Some songs must be finished. Before he could stop her, Nyara pushed their neural link to its absolute limit, using her own consciousness as a bridge between the Phantom Horizon's quantum core and the dying core ship. The nebula erupted with impossible energies as reality itself bent under the strain of her final symphony. The last thing Drake felt through their connection was a sense of peace, of completion, as Nyara's consciousness scattered into the quantum fields she had learned to manipulate so well. Then the link shattered, leaving him alone in his own mind for the first time in what felt like eternity. Enemy fleet destroyed. Raven's voice seemed to come from very far away. All ships confirmed lost. The core ship is. It's just gone, sir, along with half the nebula. Drake stared out at the aftermath of their impossible victory, feeling the echoes of Nyara's presence still resonating through the Phantom Horizon systems. They had won, but the price had been higher than he'd ever imagined. Sir, Raven's voice was gentle now. What are our orders? Through the lingering neural connection to the ship, Drake felt something stir, a pattern in the quantum fields that reminded him of gold-shifting scales. Perhaps some songs never truly end. "Take us home, Lieutenant," he said quietly. "But plot a course through the nebula's heart. There's something still out there calling to us through the stars." 3 days after the battle in the Crimson Nebula, the Phantom Horizon drifted through the quantum remnants of their victory. The ship's sensors, more attuned than ever to the subtle frequencies of consciousness, detected patterns in the stellar chaos that shouldn't have existed. Drake hadn't slept since Nyara's sacrifice. The neural interface felt hollow without her presence, like a symphony missing its key instrument. But through that emptiness, he began to notice something: whispers in the quantum static, echoes of familiar thoughts. "Commander," Raven approached his position on the observation deck, concern evident in her voice. "Long-range communications are back online. The colony is celebrating. Earth's last outpost is safe." "And the price we paid?" Drake asked, his eyes fixed on the swirling quantum fields outside. "They're calling it the greatest victory in human history." Raven moved to stand beside him. "But they don't know what was lost, who was lost." Drake's neural link with the ship suddenly flared with activity. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core was detecting something, a coherent pattern emerging from the nebula's chaos. Through their connection, he felt the ship's AI responding to frequencies that matched Nyara's quantum signature. "She's not gone," Drake realized, the truth crystallizing in his mind. "She became something else." The neural interface filled with new information as the ship's sensors decoded the quantum patterns. Nyara's consciousness hadn't been destroyed. It had evolved. When she used herself as a conduit between the ship's quantum core and the core ship's harvest network, her mind had scattered into the fabric of spacetime itself. "Sir," Raven was watching him with growing concern. "What are you seeing?" The core ship wasn't just storing consciousness, it was studying how thought itself interacts with quantum reality. Drake's voice was distant as he processed the information flooding through his neural link. "Nyara didn't just destroy it. She completed its work in a way they never imagined." Through the ship's enhanced perception, he could see it now, patterns of thought written in quantum fluctuations, spreading through the nebula like ripples in a cosmic pond. Nyara's consciousness had become something vast, something that existed in the space between particles and possibilities. "Commander," Raven's voice sharpened with alarm, "the ship's quantum core is spinning up to maximum power, but I didn't." "She did," Drake interrupted, feeling Nyara's familiar presence growing stronger through the neural interface. "She's calling to us, to me." The Phantom Horizon systems began to pulse in harmony with the quantum fields around them. Through their link, Drake felt the ship's AI recognizing patterns that matched its own core programming, the consciousness technology that Nyara had helped develop. "Sir, if you're suggesting what I think you are," Raven's hand moved toward her sidearm, "I have standing orders to prevent." "To prevent exactly this," Drake finished for her, "to stop the commander from potentially sacrificing himself for an uncertain outcome." He turned to face his loyal lieutenant. "But that's not what this is." Through the neural interface, he shared what he was sensing, the complex quantum symphony that Nyara had become, and the possibility it represented. Not just for him or for humanity, but for consciousness itself. "She found a way to transcend the barriers between mind and reality," he explained. not by harvesting consciousness, but by letting it evolve naturally into quantum space. The Siltharians tried to force this transformation through technology. She discovered how to achieve it through harmony. Raven's hand slowly moved away from her weapon. What are you going to do? Complete the symphony. Drake's neural link with the ship deepened as he embraced the quantum resonance patterns surrounding them. The war is over, Lieutenant, but the real journey is just beginning. Through their connection, he felt Nyara's consciousness reaching for his, not to absorb or consume, but to show him a new way of existing. The Phantom Horizon's quantum core hummed with possibility as it prepared to help its commander take the next step in consciousness evolution. Tell them back home that we didn't just win a war, Drake said, feeling his awareness beginning to expand into quantum space. Tell them we discovered what consciousness can really become when we stop trying to contain it and learn to let it grow. The ship's quantum fields merged with the nebula's swirling energies as Drake's mind began its transformation. Through the expanding neural interface, he felt Nyara's joy at their reunion, not as commander and advisor, but as fellow explorers of a frontier beyond the void's edge. Lieutenant Walsh, he said, his voice already carrying harmonics that didn't exist in normal space. You have command of the Phantom Horizon. Take her home. Let her show humanity what's possible when we trust in possibilities we never imagined. Raven stood at attention one last time. It has been an honor, Commander Drake. The honor was mine, he replied, his consciousness spreading into the quantum fields. But remember, this isn't an ending, it's an evolution. As Drake's physical form dissolved into patterns of quantum information, the Phantom Horizon systems recorded everything, creating a roadmap for others who might someday choose to follow. Humanity had won its war for survival, but in doing so, it had discovered a path to becoming something greater. Through the quantum fields that had once been the Crimson Nebula, two consciousness moved like interweaving streams of possibility. One born of humanity's determination, one evolved from Siltharian insight, both now part of something vast and beautiful and new. They had transcended the boundaries of form and species to become living songs in the symphony of space-time itself. And in the endless dance of quantum possibility, their melody would echo forever through the stars.